it's Elias. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in today. As you can see, we're still in my rental Nissan Sentra, 2018 Nissan Sentra. It's an S model, and basically the bottom of the barrel with the automatic transmission. And if you're considering buying this car, well, I'm glad you made it to this video because I don't recommend it. So here's why I don't recommend it. Well, before we get into that, here's some of the good things this car does have. It's got automatic headlights. That's a good thing. It's got a decent air conditioning system. That's a good thing. It gets you pretty good gas mileage, and from the outside, it looks like a small Altima. So, you know, it's not quite as embarrassing as the old Sentras used to be. But I think that's where the good stuff ends. So what are the bad stuff? And there's a very large list of bad stuff. Oh. So let me share with you the 5 things. I think there's 5 reasons why this car, it probably makes the worst new car buy that you can do in 2018. First reason, let's start with the interior. It's pretty horrible. This interior is drab, it's uncomfortable. This seat is super hard. It's very difficult to get comfortable on this thing. It feels very kind of cramped. Everything's very small. It feels like I'm back in the 90s. Back in the 90s, this interior would have been okay. You know, if you got a bottom of a barrel Civic, bottom of the barrel Corolla, or anything like that, this interior would have been just fine. And other than the gauges, I think the gauges are okay. They're a bit oversized. You know, a lot smaller would be a little bit better looking, but they're huge, and that's okay. Other than the gauges, everything else is pretty drab and pretty nasty. The buttons here are very old school feeling. I mean, it feels like this is a really old, nasty 90s car. So that's the first reason. The interior is just not as good as it should be. They really should have put something in the interior to make it a little bit better. And then the second part. Man, the second thing I think is one of the worst parts is the engine. The engine has no power. It has like no delivery. Has terrible sounds coming out of it. There's no good engine note. You know, if you have a 4-cylinder, it might as well be a decent 4-cylinder. It might as well be something that's kind of peppy, kind of fun. It'll get you around, and you know, maybe treat you a little nicely when you're going down the highway and quiet down a bit. This is not that at all. This is unrefined, very vibraty. It's very loud for no reason, and not in a good way. You know, some loud 4-cylinders can sound really good. For example, motorcycle engines, or the 4-cylinder in my Civic Type R, they sound very good. This thing, I mean, if you hear that, that sounds horrible. That just sounds really bad, and it just sounds like the engine doesn't want to be pushed. The other thing that's really bad about it, number 3, is the transmission. I don't think you could get a worse transmission in a car nowadays. I've driven a lot of different CVTs, and yes, this is a CVT, the worst of the transmissions. But I've seen decent transmissions, for CVT transmissions from Honda. I've seen decent ones, really just from Honda actually. It's the only decent CVT transmission I've ever driven. This transmission is horrible. From a stop, when you just tip in the accelerator pedal a little bit, it lurches you forward. It's not smooth at all. It's very difficult to drive this car smoothly. It kind of bangs you around, it throws you around, and it's kind of nuts how bad this car is, how hard this car is to drive smoothly. I mean, I'm flooring it now, okay, and transmission doesn't feel like it wants to cooperate. It feels like it wants to punish you for trying to drive like a normal person. So the transmission is probably the worst part about this car. The other issue that this CVT transmission has is that there's a lot of failures for this thing. All over the internet, look it up, there are a lot of failures for Nissan CVT transmissions. And honestly, any CVT transmission in my book is going to be problem prone in the long term, especially if you drive cars like I drive cars, especially the way I've been driving this car. Now, with that said, you know, there's a lot of reasons for CVT transmissions, mainly fuel economy and things like that. But this car is not even that good at fuel economy. Sure, it's returning around 35 miles to the gallon, but my Civic Type R, if not pushed, can return that. Let's listen to that a little bit. Oh, it sounds horrible. It just sounds horrible, guys. So anyway, back to the transmission. It is the worst. If you're gonna buy this car, get the manual. I don't even know if they offer it. I'm pretty sure they only offer it in the S model. If you get any of the higher models, you can't get the manual. This thing is horrible. The next thing that bothers me about this car is the suspension, the chassis. You know, when you buy a small car, you expect it to be fun to drive around, to be able to poke around little holes in traffic and, you know, dart around and feel planted as you drive it. You know, I drove a Honda Fit recently, and that thing drove like it was on rails. And it's not really designed for track day driving or crazy autocross driving. But when you're driving around, it feels peppy, it feels fun, it feels light on its feet. This car does not feel like any of that. It feels like you're punishing it for trying to have any fun in it at all. Now, most people are not going to be using this car to dart around traffic like I usually do. But if a car is not fun to drive, then it's not going to be great to drive long term. It's going to be one of those cars that you're kind of punishing yourself for driving every day. And I get it. A lot of people don't care about driving. They don't care about what car they drive. And they just want a good, reliable transportation that'll take them from point A to point B. So that gets us to the final, and honestly, I think the worst thing about this car. There's zero redeeming qualities about this thing. Zero redeeming qualities. So yesterday I did a live stream about this horrible car. I had you guys guess on what this car was, what a horrible car this was, and you guys mostly guessed Nissan Sentra. I think people just know Nissan Sentra is just a terrible car. And so I thought this car would probably cost around $10,000 to $12,000. I thought it was the cheapest car in the country. So then I went online and I looked it up. I looked up the prices for the Nissan Sentra. And this car I'm in right now, this very car, MSRPs for $18,000. 18 grand for this heap of junk. Honestly, let's be honest. This thing, you know, it's basically putting lipstick on a pig. They put some nice piano black materials here and there that kind of look upscale, but nothing here is modern at all. The transmission is garbage. The engine is garbage. The way it drives is terrible. And so the price, I thought at least the price would have been something cool, something cheap, something that anybody can probably get and not have to worry about, you know, expensive costs down the line. But the fact of the matter is the transmission breaks down often, usually right after the warranty runs out. So the transmission dies right after the warranty runs out, and that's a shame. And so it's not even a reliable car, and it's $18,000. Now, it is true you can get this car for around, I've seen it for around 15 grand being advertised in different dealerships, and that goes to show you nobody's buying this thing. These cars are going to the lots and nobody's buying them, and for good reason. I'm glad no one's buying this thing. It is awful. This car lives in rental fleets, and that's why I got stuck with one when I went to Avis and rented a car. I will never go back to Avis because I actually paid for an upgrade and they gave me this garbage. Never again. I'm going Enterprise or Hertz or something else. Never again, Avis. You lost my business. You messed up. And you messed up because you gave me this car. So if you're looking for a cheap car, the cheapest transportation you can buy, look at Hyundai. They have a nice 6-speed automatic in their Hyundai Elantra, in their Sonata. You can get a Sonata for 17 to 18 grand. That's pretty good. Sonatas are pretty good cars. They're roomy, they're semi-fun. You know, you're not gonna get any bells and whistles with it, but you don't need that stuff. You're looking for a cheap transportation. They're gonna be, eons better than this crappy Sentra. Now, I'm being harsh on this car, and I know, but I just think that Nissan should be ashamed of themselves for selling this thing as it is, for the price that it is. You know, if this is a $10,000 car, $12,000 car, I wouldn't be giving them so much crap. But I looked it up last night, and I saw the price, and I had to make this video for you guys. I really did. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about the choices that I gave you. What choice would you make if you had to buy a cheap new car? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say a used car, they're going to buy used this, used that. Let's narrow it down. What is the nicest, cheap, new car that you would buy with your money if you had to buy a brand new, cheap car? And my choice would be, honestly, the cheapest car would be a Honda Fit. You get a Honda Fit, the seats in the back fold up really nicely. It becomes basically a small minivan. It's kind of fun to throw around. Even with a CVT, I would get the manual. I would definitely get the manual. But with the CVT, it's still pretty fun to throw around. It's not a bad car to drive around. It's not a bad looking car. I mean, it's not the greatest looking car either. Some people hate the way it looks. A lot of people actually hate the way it looks. I'm okay with the way it looks. It's not too bad. But the Honda Fit is probably the best car for you to buy, and there's a lot of other good cars that you can buy for under around $18,000. So like I said, the Hyundai lineup, the Toyota Corolla, Toyota hatchback, if you could, you know, spend an extra couple of grand, I would get the Civic Hatchback LX. That's a great bargain for like 18, 19 grand. Civic Hatchback LX is awesome. Turbocharged engine, you get a sweet interior, and it's an awesome looking car. I think it looks great. Some people don't like it, but I really do. And you'll avoid this hunk of junk. Alright guys, I'm going to stop being so harsh on this car. I know some people still get these. You know, in the used market, these probably go for nothing. I don't expect these cars to go for very much. They're not very reliable, like I said. So if you ever stuck with one of these, my heart goes out to you. I feel your pain. I understand what's going on. Try not to get it. Try to get something else. That's all I can say. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.